Class, today we're going to talk about lesson 2.8 and 2.9, and we're going to kind of be discussing in this lesson here is about how to write equations of lines in slope-intercept form. So you might remember in the last chapter what we did is we wrote the equations of lines that are proportional, and we wrote these equations as y is equal to mx, where m is our slope. And we're going to do something similar today, except today we're going to consider the y-intercept. So let's get some definitions here. The first definition I have for you guys is the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is simply the point where the graph of your line crosses the y-axis. It is commonly represented by the variable b. So if we look over here, if we have like an x and y axis here and a dotted line going across, the point where our dotted line crosses the y-axis, or your vertical line right here, this would be the y-intercept, and it's commonly referred to as the variable b. So it's simply just the point where your line crosses the y-axis. If this point right here is at like 2 or something, then b would be equal to 2. If it was at 3, then b would be equal to 3. It's whatever number the y-axis is at when your line crosses it. Now the big concept today is slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form. So the equation of any line can be represented by y is equal to mx plus b, where x and y are your coordinates, m is your slope, and b is the y-intercept. Now let's think for a second. How is that similar to the equation we learned yesterday, y is equal to mx? Well, clearly the first parts of the equation are the same, right? They both say y is equal to mx, y is equal to mx. However, slope-intercept form includes adding on the y-intercept, or plus b. Now, if we think about a proportional line, remember, a proportional line goes through the point 0, 0, which means when it crosses the y-axis, it crosses at the point 0. So if I were to do the plus b on this, if I were to write it in slope-intercept form, and I can, I would write y is equal to mx plus 0, which is obviously just y is equal to mx. And that's why the equation of a proportional line is simply y is equal to mx. Now, the one that we are going to be using moving forward, and the one I really want you guys to remember here, is slope-intercept form. Y is equal to mx plus b. This is the one that'll work for everything. If you guys want to think about crossing a proportional line right here, you could still use the equation y is equal to mx plus b. Just remember, since your y-intercept is at 0, you'd be adding on 0. Okay, so let's look at some visuals here. So let's first understand why we get the term slope-intercept form. So if we look at over here on the left, we see that slope-intercept form just comes from the components of this equation. Just like I told you guys before, m is equal to the slope. So the slope comes from the variable m, and b is equal to our y-intercept, which is where we get the equation, or the name, slope-intercept form. Y is equal to mx plus b. Now let's look at this in practice here. What does this look like in an actual line? So right here we have a line going up and down as a positive slope. So we need to find two things to be able to write our equation in slope-intercept form. We need to be able to find the slope, and we need to be able to find the y-intercept. So just like I said, the y-intercept is the point where your line crosses the y-axis. Or if we look right here, the line crosses the y-axis at the point y is equal to 2. So right up here, you can see we replaced our b with a plus 2 because my y-intercept is positive 2. Now let's also talk about the slope. So the slope is found by doing rise over run. So notice here we go up 1, 2, 3 boxes and over 1, which means our slope can be represented by 3 over 1 or simply 3. And if we look over here at our equation, our slope has been replaced with the number 3, or our m has been replaced with the number 3. So the equation of this line right here could be represented using slope-intercept form as y is equal to 3x plus 2. All right, let's do one of these on our own here. So we want to find the equation of this line, and there's 3 steps for us to do. It's highly important you guys write these 3 steps down here. Step 1 is find the slope. Step 2 is find the y-intercept. And step 3 is craft your equation. Now, step 1 and step 2 are really interchangeable. You can do whichever one you want first. It doesn't make a difference, but you do need to find both of them. So this one says we should start off by finding our slopes. Let's do just that. Let's find my slope. Now, remember, my m can be represented as the rise over run. The rise over run. So if I'm looking at these points here, I simply need to find 2 points and count how much up and over I have to go to get to them. So here, let's choose these 2 points. Now I have to go up 1, 2 spots. So since I'm going up, my rise would be replaced with the number I just counted, which was 2. Now to get from where I am right now to where the dot is, I have to go left 1 spot. And since I'm going left instead of right, that will be a -1. Notice how in your number line here, the negative numbers are to the left. So anytime you move to the left, you will get a negative number. And then that simply means my slope is 2 divided by -1, which equals -2. Now we just have to find our y-intercept. So our y-intercept, or our point B, is the point where we cross the y-axis. So you got to look at your line here and kind of follow it all the way up. We haven't crossed the y-axis yet, but right here we do. Right here we cross the y-axis, and this is at the point 3. So since this is at the point 3 here, that means my b is equal to 3. Now we simply have to go back and rewrite our equation. Y is equal to mx plus b using what we just found. So we're still going to have the y is equal to blank x plus blank. So I'll write that in black here, and then we'll replace it with what we now know. So my m, we found out that m is equal to -2. Remember, a variable is just a placeholder for a number we don't know yet. But now since I know what m is equal to, I can replace it with that number. So I'll replace my m with the number 2. I also know what b is equal to. So since b is simply a placeholder for a number we didn't know yet, but now we know it, we can replace b with what we found it out to be. And it turns out b is equal to 3. So I can go over here and I can replace the letter b with the number 3, which means the equation of this line is -2x plus 3 is equal to y, or y is equal to -2x plus 3. And again, that is the equation in slope-intercept form. Feel free to pause this video if you guys need to get stuff written down here, but I'm going to keep moving forward. Alrighty, we need to find the equation of this line here. Again, this is the equation in slope-intercept form, or y is equal to mx plus b. Give me 1 second, everybody. I will be right back. All right, so we want to find the equation of this line right here. So let's start off by finding our slope. To find our slope, I need to find my m by doing rise over run. Rise over run. I mean, sure, I could use the equation m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, but whenever we have a picture of the graph, it's really just easiest to do it by counting. So here I see this point and this point are 2 good points we can use. So to go from this point to over here, we have to go up by 1. Since our boxes are counting by 1/2 here, this would be the same as going up by 1. Now, since I'm going up by 1, my rise would be equal to 1. Now let's count how far over I have to go. I have to go over 1.5. So I have to go over 1.5. Alrighty, so this would give us the slope is m is equal to rise over run is equal to 1 over 1.5. Or I could rewrite this as m is equal to 2/3 after doing some simplifying. All right, I now also have to find my y-intercept. So to find my y-intercept, we have to follow this line and track when does it cross the y-axis, which it does right here. And since the number at that point is 1, that means my b is equal to 1. Alrighty, now I can go back to this equation here and rewrite it using what I now know. Since I now know m is equal to 2/3, or actually this should be a -2/3, excuse me, my line is pointing down and I went left 1.5, so it should be a -2/3. My m would be -2/3. I can replace the variable with what I now know it is. Same with my b. I now know that my b equals 1. So here, instead of writing b, I can rewrite it as plus 1. And I get the equation. Y is equal to -2/3 x plus 1. All right, we got a couple questions left here, everybody. Let's make sure we're finishing strong. So today we need to graph the line y is equal to 3x minus 5. So the best way to do this one is to identify our slope and our y-intercept. If we look at where my plus b has been replaced, remember this is using the equation y is equal to mx plus b. I notice that the b right here has been replaced with -5. Notice it's really important we grab the sign in front of it as well, because otherwise we would plot the opposite, which is not correct here. So now I need to plot the point -5. I can also see that my slope, or my m, has been replaced with the number 3. So since my slope has been replaced with the number 3, that means my m, or my rise over run, can be rewritten as 3 over 1. Now what that means is that from every point here, I have to rise 1, 2, 3 spots and run 1 spot. Rise 1, 2, 3 spots and run 1 spot. Rise 1, 2, 3 spots and run 1 spot. Or 1 unit here. And then I simply have to connect these dots. Now you guys could also solve this problem by making yourselves a table here, like a y and an x table. And let's say, for example, we want to find the point where x is equal to 0. Sorry, this should be x and a y. It's always neater like that. Let's plot the point when x is equal to 0. So when x is equal to 0, I need to plug that into my equation. 3 times 0 minus 5. 3 times 0 is 0 minus 5 is -5. So we get the point right down here, -5. 0, -5. And it turns out all of these other points we would get as well if we plug them into a table. So whether or not you guys want to solve these graphing of the lines by making a table, by using your slope and y-intercept, both of them will yield the same answer. Alrighty, last one for us here. We want to use the equation to find the slope and y-intercept of the line y is equal to 0.5x minus 2. So remember, we are rewriting the slope-intercept form here, which is y is equal to mx plus b. If I look at here, remember my m stands for slope, and the number that is replaced by m is 0.5, which means my slope is equal to 0.5. If I look for my b, remember b stands for y-intercept, and my b has been replaced with the number -2. So my y-intercept would be equal to -2. And then it's as simple as that on that problem. Alrighty, everybody. I hope this was helpful for you guys today. What I need you to do now is make sure you write down 2 complete sentences about what you learned today. This is your conclusion. If you guys have any questions, please bring them to class tomorrow. I will see you all then. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Peace out.